man, an essay is a test. Kind of. Tests make you better. A test makes you better. A test strengthens you if you approach it the right way. A temptation preys on your weaknesses. The purpose of life is not to be happy. First off, what do you know about what's going to make you happy? Is money going to make you happy? Yeah. How would you know if you've never had it before? Maybe it will, but you have no way of knowing what's going to make you happy. How do you know what makes you happy? That's a real question, by the way. How do you know what makes you happy?
Experience.
You have to experience it. That's what it is. You can't pursue happiness. Happiness has to come from something that you're doing. It just makes more sense to live as though you have 1 trillion years or to live as though you have 7 days. Because the way that you make a meaningful life is to pile up meaningful experiences. And that's how you start to discover what makes you happy. What you have is just this incredibly precious gift of life that we can't even conceive of because we can't conceive of what it is to not have life. Really think about this. The fact that you're even here right now is just an incredible miracle, dude. And the fact that you are here right now instead of anybody else is just trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions to one. And you already overcame those odds. So what are you worried about now? That's how you discover what makes you happy. You have to do it. And if you're trying to find something that makes you happy, you probably aren't going to find it. Because you would never think about raising pigeons. You would never think about something like that. You would never think about gardening or something silly or whatever, you know? When I ask you, like, what makes us happy? We start thinking big. Traveling to Paris makes me happy. Skydiving makes me happy. So I'm just thinking about some of the things that make me happy, man. It's pretty dope. Almost none of it costs anything, except for time, which of course is the most precious thing that you can give. But man, it's the most incredible life I've ever known, that's for sure. Be useful. You don't want to be useless. There's nothing that's worse in life, especially you guys. There's nothing in life that's worse than a useless man. Geez, be useful in some way. Useful to who? Useful to society. Useful to people around you. Useful to strangers, man. Be useful to yourself. Man, the things that you do, they reverberate in eternity. You know, whatever kindness you show today will reverberate in eternity. Whatever anger you show, whatever meanness you show is going to reverberate in history. Maybe you won't be remembered for those things, man, but the impact of you is going to be there. What you don't want at the end of all this for it to just not have matter that you existed at all. Now I ask that because we do take for granted that that whole second part there about improving yourself, becoming the best version of yourself. What does it matter what version of yourself you are? Why does it matter? And I mean that because we ask well, because then you'll be happy. I don't know, look around, man. Do a lot of people seem happy to you? When you go, if any of you guys go to the gym and you see people lifting, they look happy to you? I don't know, they always look angry to me. You know? And it always look like, even when they're standing in front of the mirror, taking a picture, they've got a perpetual scowl on their face. It's like, why are you scowling? Shouldn't you be happy? I see people at like jiu-jitsu tournaments and they win, and they're not like all smiles, they're all like scowling. Like they're always, it's almost like being sad and miserable is a badge of honor. Maybe because it makes us feel like we fit in with the rest of the world. But all these things, like, I don't know, anybody here run? You go running? I don't know, one person? Two? Do you ever get that runner's high you hear about afterwards? I never have. You ever get it? Huh? If you guys don't know, she does like half marathons. She runs a lot. And I don't know, I've never gotten that runner's high afterwards. I never get that after exercise. It's usually me just kind of sitting there asking myself, what am I doing with my life? I've got nothing to prove. Why am I still doing this? I don't know. And then you ask people who are just like, covered in Cheeto dust, playing video games in their mom's basements. They seem awfully happy. especially the 12-year-olds and what they apparently do with my mother, they say, while they're playing video games. But people seem, people don't, it's what,
Santa said that to me.
if I can believe what they, yeah, that's true though.
Yeah. Just 4 leches cake.
Oh,
Make sure you don't edit that out.
that was a joke. I'll leave that in there? Okay, I'll leave that in there. No, but I really asked that question, why does it matter? Because if you, like we say it almost like reflexively, like, yeah, you should be the best version of yourself. Why? Well, because then you'd be the best version of yourself. Yeah, but why? Well, because then you're the best version of yourself. But how do we know what the best version of ourselves are? You never, I mean, we can think of like a way that we might be able to improve ourselves. But how about this? I wonder how many of you, if you were in great shape and you looked great, if you would actually be a worse version of yourself. Like, in other words, if you got more attention from other people, would you be a better person or would you be a worse person? I don't know. I really mean that. Like if you were really, really wealthy, would you be a better person or a worse person? I was just talking to someone yesterday. I was saying that money doesn't make you or break you. It doesn't change who you are. What it does is it amplifies who you are. If you're a person who's already like a really stingy, well, not even stingy, if you're a very greedy, self-centered person and you have a bunch of money, you're going to be a greedy, self-centered rich person. If you're somebody who has very little money right now, and you're saying like, oh man, rich people should give away more of their money. How come you don't give away your money? Well, because I don't have much. You have more than a homeless person though, don't you? Well, yeah, but I don't have. Then you would be that greedy rich person. If you're a person who's like, I just got this hot dog from 7-Eleven. This guy looks hungry, man. You know, dude, here you go. And you get that person a hot dog, you would probably be the more altruistic, giving rich person. It would just amplify who you are because it's just, we'll have an excuse for why we aren't the thing that we think other people should be. But it wouldn't make you or break you. It would just make you more like yourself. Yeah. It's good to know what you're going to do before you get somewhere. In other words, if you're going to, it's good to know before you walk into a test what's on the test and what you have to know, because then you know how you're going to answer the questions on the test. One of the reasons that we talk about hard cases, it was in this class, right? We talked about the trolley car and then the towers with the terrorists and all that. Why do I ask you those kinds of questions? Why are those thought experiments useful? Because then you know what you might do in a situation like that, so that you don't have to just make it up off the top of your head. There was a student last period who came up, and I was just already in a mood last period, and he was asking me, he'll probably watch this video too, he was asking me the difference between like when you write like you have a time constraint versus when you have time to write. And so then today he came up and asked me about whether I'm a better writer under time constraints or whether I'm a better writer when I have all the time in the world. Because I was sharing with him that when I was in college, let's say March 1st, a professor would give me an essay. We'll give the class an essay. And he would say, okay, this essay is due on March 31st. That's usually what they do. They'll give you like 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or whatever. I would go home that day and I would write the essay. And then over the course of the next few weeks, I would revise. Why? Was it because I wanted to get the grade? To this day, I'm sure you guys can figure out from the way I grade right now, I don't care about grades. I mean, if I cared any less about grades, I'd be a senior with a modified graduation plan. That's how little I care about grades. And so I said, no, what it is that an essay to me is an opportunity to develop my ideas and then also to share what I know. In other words, the way that you become a better thinker is you become a better writer. There's a really tight connection there. But we don't think of it that way. We think of it like, oh man, an essay is a test. Kind of. Tests make you better. A test makes you better. A test strengthens you if you approach it the right way. A temptation preys on your weaknesses, but a test makes you better. There's a difference between a temptation and a test. So I would look at these essays and go, what do I think about this topic? And I'll think about this. And that's why I revise it over time. It wasn't because I cared about a grade, it was because I wanted to be sure about what I thought about it And I wanted to be clear about it because I was putting my name at the top of the paper and I was presenting it to the world as, this is Stephen Scanlon. Not this is my essay, because you are your ideas. And if I ask you who are you, that capital U that I asked you for the first week of class, you're not your body, but you're a collection of psychological states over time. You are your ideas. You are your experiences. You are your impressions. So when you take your idea and you put it onto a page and you put your name on it, you're telling the world, you're telling your teacher, you're telling your professor, this is me. This is a sliver of who I am as a human being. And we kind of intuitively know that, which is why when we get a poor grade on it, if we're really thinking about it, we're thinking wow, why? Because there's an aspect of me that's unclear. There's an aspect of me that's illogical. There's an aspect of me that doesn't quite measure up. And then that's when the defense mechanisms kick in. Man, I don't care anyway. I was just bullshitting my way through it. Yeah. So now what do I know about you? You're a person who's more practiced at bullshitting than you are at developing ideas and expressing yourself and putting the true, real you out there in the world. Because if you never do that, you may as well have never even existed in the first place, man. Because if you never show the world who you really are, if you only ever show this mask, this persona, that's the realest thing about you. The realest thing about you is a fake thing. And then that means that if you never show the world who you really are, what your ideas truly are, you might as well have never existed in the first place because no one's ever going to see it. It's not going to matter. These are the things that the purpose of life is not to be happy. Because first off, what do you know about what's going to make you happy? Is money going to make you happy? Yeah. How would you know if you've never had it before? You like to think it will? Because then I could buy cool shit. Yeah, and how much cool shit are you going to have? And then how much of it can you use? And how much of it just piles up? And at one point when you're there and you're falling asleep at night in your nice heated bed, then, do you really sit there and go, you know what makes me happy? I've got 25 cars right now. And if you think, yeah, again, I would suggest to you, maybe it will, but you have no way of knowing what's going to make you happy. And if that was true, by the way, I guess I'd ask you, and this is true, by the way, what groups tend to commit suicide the most? Wealthy people. Yeah. Suicide is a disease of three groups of people. Very wealthy people, very young people like teenagers who don't have a perspective yet of knowing that things get better. In other words, if you're suffering in your life and you don't have an ability to project yourself 10 years out in the future and say, it sucks now, but it will be better later, then you think that it's hopeless, so it's never going to get better. And that's why you would commit suicide, because you feel hopeless. Wealthy people feel hopeless because they have everything a human being could possibly want, they think, and it's not there. Then the third group of people that suicide is a disease of is highly intelligent people. So wealthy people, young people, and highly intelligent people. Who doesn't commit suicide? Poor people. Why? Moreover, it's because survival is part and parcel of who they are as a human being, but also because they know the price of everything and the value of everything. How much is a gallon of milk? I don't know. $6? Okay, I'll take your word for it. If you ask a person who makes $10 million a year, how much is a gallon of milk? I don't know. What's the value of it? I don't know. If you're a poor person, you sit there and go, $6 for a gallon of milk, and I can feed my baby so many times off of a gallon of milk. You know the price of it, and you know the value of it. And you have to know the value of everything in your life. If you don't know the value of anything, then what on earth are you living for? I guarantee you that it's not going to be that money stuff. Now, you do have to have a certain level of money to be comfortable, to relieve some stress in your life. Life is better when you're not having to float rent payments. That's true. But is life better when you have 10 different houses and you can only ever live in one or two of them at a time? And you're having to work so much that you don't have time to do it anyway. You have to figure out those things that matter. So then if you think like, oh, it's going to make me happy to do all this stuff. Again, you have no idea what's going to make you happy. How do you know what makes you happy? That's a real question, by the way. How do you know what makes you happy? Does skydiving make you happy? You have no idea. What are you going to say?
I was just going to say, what makes you happy is like things that you enjoy or things that satisfy you.
How do you know you enjoy them and they satisfy you?
Experience.
You have to experience it. That's what it is. You can't pursue happiness. Happiness has to come from something that you're doing. At some point, you might sit there and go like, holy shit, I'm happy. I have a picture of myself, actually, standing in the Mediterranean Sea with an AK-47. True story. And there's a picture of me and I'm smiling. And I remember the person who took the picture, the very second they took that picture, I remember saying to myself, I'm happy right now. And then they got the picture. I love the picture. Not because of the AK-47, not because it's the Mediterranean, but because I'm actually sitting there thinking, and I know what I'm thinking in that picture, and it was taken. Yeah, what are you going to say?
It's sort of like freedom.
It's a certain level of freedom, but it's freedom with a purpose. Because freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want to do. By the way, as much as we think like that would be great, no, it wouldn't. What would you do if you had all that freedom? Like, for example, if we sat down right now and to play Monopoly. So we're going to play Monopoly. And then we put out the pieces, and then you're trying to pick out which piece you want, and you see me putting out hotels on all the properties. Ooh, what are you doing, Scallon? I'm putting down hotels. Why? Because I want to win. Yep, that's not how you play the game. That's how I play the game. And you're like, oh, well, I guess I can play that way if I take all the money, and you grab the bank and you take all the money. And I go, yeah, that's how you have the money, because if your piece just dies by throw them off the table, and then we're going to flip up the table and go, forget it, man, we're not playing. Why? Because there's no rules. We're completely free to do whatever we want to do. But that wouldn't make us happy. We wouldn't even get to play the game. Instead, what we'd have to do is we have to have a set of rules. We have to have limitations. Because limitations are what make things valuable. If you're going to live for 1 trillion years, how important is today? Yeah, how important is tomorrow? And the day after, for the next 1 trillion years? You're going to have 1 trillion years of it doesn't matter piled up. Because all of a sudden you might look back at the end and go, holy crap, I'm dying tomorrow, and I've lived for 1 trillion years, and I've done nothing because every day didn't matter. If I told you you're going to die in 7 days, and somehow I knew this and you believed me, think about how you would live differently. Because every single day would matter. Now, unfortunately, we don't know when we're going to die. So I asked the question, which way it just makes more sense? To live as though you have 1 trillion years, or to live as though you have 7 days? Because the way that you make a meaningful life is to pile up meaningful experiences. And that's how you start to discover what makes you happy. If you go to 20-year-old Mike Tyson, and this is a guy who unified the 3 major heavyweight belts at 20 years old, the youngest person to ever do it. And this guy's just pacing around. If you ever hear interviews with this guy where he's like talking about wanting to eat people's children and stuff like that, I'm serious. He's like, I'm gonna eat his children. He's talking about how he's just gonna murder people. If you go to that guy and you go, hey, 20-year-old Mike Tyson, what? He just got paid $50 million for a fight. You wanna go race pigeons? What the fuck? Pigeons? Get the fuck out of here. Never listened to you. Now, if you look at, how old is he now? Like in his 50s, I think? Yeah, however old Mike Tyson is now, and you ask him about pigeons, that's what he does. He raises pigeons. The guy raises pigeons. And if you ask him, and it's funny, when you see him like do like a boxing demonstration, I remember watching him do this thing where he's moving, and he gets to the end, he throws punches, and he goes, man, I'm glad I don't do that anymore. And he's like almost winded. He hates the thought that if you ask him to get back in the ring, he's like, nah. Want to go raise pigeons? Uh-huh. Which one's more valuable? Well, this guy's done both. He can tell you for himself which one's more valuable. To him, he gets more value out of raising pigeons. He lost all his money from boxing. He spent it. It's all gone. But the pigeons are still there. And what does he have for all that money? He's got a bunch of, remember when? Stories. Remember that? I used to have, but now he's got these pigeons that, you're so cute. He trains pigeons. How do you know what matters? You've got to do it. You got to try things. You have to go out there and experience things, take chances, take risks. And I'm not saying take a risk like, I wonder what it would be like to jump out of a plane with no parachute. No, be wise. And I'm saying, yeah, why not? I'll say YOLO, right? Only live once. Here's the thing, you only live once. Meaning, do not waste your life. Don't waste it. Don't jump out of an airplane with no parachute. Fuck it, man, YOLO. No, but that's the thing, you only live once, man. And what you have is just this incredibly precious gift of life that we can't even conceive of because we can't conceive of what it is to not have life. You know what I mean? If you really think about this, the fact that you're even here right now is just an incredible miracle, dude. Like, I'll be sparing with the details, dude, but if your mom and dad had hooked up seconds later in one direction or the other, you wouldn't be here. Some other kid would be here. You know, I was talking to you about this last week. I don't know if it would make any difference at all. Like if I just didn't show up anymore. Like, you know, if I was out for a week, I was like, oh, but we missed you. Yeah, and then today you'd be over it. Would it matter if you had, would it matter which teacher you have? I don't know. It would make a difference, but the question is, what kind of a difference? I don't know. I hope it's a positive difference being. I hope you're better for being in here. I hope. I worry that I make you guys worse. I worry about that a lot. You know that. I talk about it all the time. I worry about it, man. Not enough to change, but I worry about it. But one thing I can actually say is that at least I'm happy doing it. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques. Yeah. And the fact that you are here right now instead of anybody else is just trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions to one. And you already overcame those odds. So what are you worried about now? Well, but the chances of being successful in business, dude, you already won one race, trillions to one, and here you are. So maybe bet on yourself for that. Maybe take a chance on something. Yeah, but what if I try this thing? And what if it doesn't work out? What if I get embarrassed? Dude, what are the chances of it working out for you? Is it more or less than 10 trillion to one? Because you already won the 10 trillion to one race. And even if it doesn't work out for you, at least you've probably got a pretty good story. And then the further away from it you get, you probably have a better story. Remember that time that oh my God, I remember that one time I did, that was so embarrassing, and you're laughing about it. You're laughing about it with some distance and some time between it, you know? And that's the thing that makes for an enjoyable life. Unfortunately, it also makes for some, hey, remember when stories? But don't dwell on them. Don't forget the stuff that happened, but don't dwell on them. That's how you discover what makes you happy. You have to do it. And if you're trying to find something that makes you happy, you probably aren't going to find it. Because you would never think about raising pigeons. You would never think about something like that. You would never think about gardening or something silly or whatever, you know? When I ask you, like, what makes us happy? We start thinking big. Traveling to Paris makes me happy. Skydiving makes me happy. So I'm just thinking about some of the things that make me happy, man. It's pretty dope. Almost none of it costs anything, except for time, which of course is the most precious thing that you can give. But man, I don't know. It's the most incredible life I've ever known, that's for sure. So be productive. What does that mean? It means produce something? Produce something. Be useful. That's a great thing you can be for people. Be useful. You don't want to be useless. There's nothing that's worse in life, especially you guys. There's nothing worse in life that's worse than a useless man. Geez, be useful in some way. And any girl is going to tell you that too. Don't be useless. How many times do you hear about that kind of complaint? He's a useless man. What about other people? Don't worry about that. Worry about yourself. Be useful in some way. Useful to who? Useful to society. Useful to the people around you. Useful to strangers, man. Be useful to yourself. Because at the end of all of it, you want there to be some difference, that you even existed at all. It won't necessarily be something where people remember your name, but man, the things that you do, they reverberate in eternity. You know, whatever kindness you show today will reverberate in eternity. Whatever anger you show, whatever meanness you show is going to reverberate in history. So maybe you won't be remembered for those things, man, but the impact of you is going to be there. What you don't want it at the end of all this for it to just not have matter that you existed at all.